Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm showing you today how I made Citrine cold process soap using the Love Your Suds crystal stamp set. Let's get started. So I'm very excited to show you this. This is a custom set that I have been working with Belinda over at loveyoursuds.com. It was so awesome to offer to do this, and it's so cool. So the kit comes with a stamp for your crystals. It comes with a little bamboo stick, and it also comes with the scraper. But what is so cool about the scraper is that you can use it two different ways. So I'm going to show you first how I adjust the little bamboo stick. You'll see why it's so important. It actually stabilizes the scraper when you put it inside the mold. So I just take a little bit of tape and make sure it's nicely placed. I also put a little bit of tape horizontally. It covers the side that I'm not going to be using, so that is not a problem. But she is so awesome. She actually designed this to fit my molds, and she will be offering this in her shop. But basically, you hold the scraper by the little popsicle stick, and it makes for a perfect impression. So let's get started. First and foremost, always wear your gloves when you're making cold process soap. I'm wearing long sleeves today. Sometimes I get too comfortable and I shouldn't. I should always wear my sleeves. First thing is I'm going to take my lye solution and add my sodium lactate. I love this stuff for making a harder bar of soap. It's also easier to unmold once the soap has saponified. So for this project, I made sure to use a fragrance oil that I'm comfortable using, that is a little bit slow moving. I've got my scraper ready, and now I'm going to start coloring or prepping some of my colors. So in this little jug, I'm just going to put in some titanium dioxide mixed with water, because a portion of it I do want to color white. And then I'm using fire cider mica from Nurture Soap to color the majority of the batter. I think it's such a beautiful rusty color. But first I'm going to make sure that I get my soap to light trace. So now that I've got my batter at a light trace, I'd rather have more working time with this than less. I am working with a slow moving fragrance oil, but still. I'm gonna separate a little bit off to the side in the little jug that I put my titanium dioxide in, and then the rest of this batter, which is roughly half of it, I'm going to color with the fire cider mica. It's so beautiful. It's the perfect autumn orange, copper, red, and you don't need a lot to get it really potent. So I'm just going to mix it straight into my soap. I usually like to dilute it in oil, but this is fine too. And I'm also adding some of the fragrance oil to this. I usually eyeball it. It's pretty much half of it. So I'm just going to stick blend it until I make sure that all the mica is really nicely incorporated. And I'm just going to pour this directly into the mold. And as you can see, it really made my batter, quite liquidy. So I'm going to have plenty of working time with this fragrance oil. It's just divine. For those of you wondering, this soap will be scented in lavender, apples, and oak, one of my all-time favorite fragrances, particularly because it's so good to work with. I'm leaving a little bit in the bucket. You'll see that once we start scraping, we'll get some leftover of this particular color. My goal is to have this solid copper area and then have like a marbled white and peach and copper colored marbled area. So nothing goes to waste in this soap. Absolutely not. We save every little bit and it's all gonna go back into the same mold. And just make sure, don't make a big, huge mess. This is why it's so important to wear your gloves, because if I had not had gloves, that soap batter, raw soap batter, would have gotten on my hands and burned my skin. I'm setting a little bit aside. I'm gonna add what I have left of this Mad Mica's Goldfinger. It's a really pretty warm toned gold, but this is just gonna make like a peachy, like cream color. It's gonna be kind of like the mid-tone between the white and the copper tone that I already have in the mold. So now I'm just checking the consistency of the copper colored soap batter that is in the mold, and it's quite malleable, but still, in all honesty, I used my soap scraper and it was still a little bit too liquid, but I made the best of it. So basically you're gonna insert your scraper at the end of the mold and then push back and then remove any excess. I had spritzed my copper color with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, which is why I'm getting those little crunchy bits. It's not a big deal. It's just the soap batter setting a little bit with the rubbing alcohol. But yeah, just run it back and forth until you get a nice clean impression and you don't have any excess sitting around. So now I'm going back to that white soap batter and that peachy one. I had still not included my fragrance oil. And here I have all the excess that I took out of the copper colored soap batter. Now I'm going to add my fragrance oil, and you can see it's going to change the consistency because this fragrance oil is so good. It lightens up your trace really well. I'm going to start with a little bit of white and the impression that I already made, because I really want that to look kind of separate from the copper tone. So I'm going to place my spatula as close as possible just to break the fall a little bit, because I don't want to disturb any of the nice scraping that we already did in the mold. So just a little bit of white, and now I'm just going to basically do a little bit of an in the pot swirl and kind of mix all these colors in and just swirl it back into the mold. So for this soap top, it actually is going to end up being the bottom of the soap. So I want to make sure that I pack all the soap batter in there as nice and even as possible, because I want it to be the bottom of the bar. So what is actually the bottom right now is going to be the top. So just make sure to scrape that really nicely. Reason being is because I used one of the inverted side of the soap scraper just because I felt more comfortable with it. And here I'm just going to cut the bars, and I think they look so cool, the marbled area. And look how smooth that soap top is because it was actually the bottom of the mold. I did end up planing off a little bit of the bottom just to make sure that the bottoms of the soap bars looked nice and even, but I think it looked really cool. Again, in hindsight, I think I should have waited a little bit longer for the copper color to be a little bit thicker, just to hold the shape a little better, but I think it's quite forgiving and it kind of worked out really just fine. So just a little tip, make sure that your soap batter is slightly thicker. I just like I prefer to work with a thinner batter just because I get so nervous that it can accelerate or anything. But just that little tip right there is super helpful. So now I'm going to stamp the soaps with the soap stamp. I love to spritz my stamp with a little bit of rubbing alcohol to help it release a little bit. You can do it by hand, just how I'm doing it here. Just line it up with the pattern, and as you can see, the impression is really good. You can also use a rubber mallet, which is what I personally like to use, but I thought I'd like to show you how I do it by hand in case you don't have one. Just apply a nice even pressure and release it gently from the soap. And there you go, you have your crystals. As you can see, I could have been a little bit better with the alignment, but yeah, it worked really great. So I let this dry overnight just to make sure that the impression is a little bit more stable. And now I'm just adding a little bit of gold melt and pour soap because I wanted some of that like glittery gold goodness that reminds me of Citrine soaps. So I'm just gently pushing these in with a stainless steel spatula, and then I will also let these dry overnight. Once they're dry overnight, to make sure that that glycerin soap really sticks in there, you're going to plane off the excess, and then you can see that you'll get your gold lines out there, your gold outlines. Ooh, can't speak. Gold outlines in your crystals. So just gently plane off that excess melt and pour soap, and there you go. That's it. You can also use some soap dough. I think that's really great too. Or you can use some liquid soap batter, but then you'll have to also let that sit a day or two to saponify, and then you can just plane it off. I liked the transparent glitteriness that I get from melt and pour, so that is what I did here. But also I was able to use a little bit of the leftovers from my little embed that I will be putting on top. And you can see here I'm also planing off on the bottom and the sides just to make sure that everything looks nice and clean. And these are my melt and pour embeds that I was just talking about. I made these with glycerin soap and the same colors, a little bit of Goldfinger, a little bit of that fire cider, and I believe it was Gold Shimmer from Nurture Soap. So I just poured a bunch of the melt and pour, and then I cut it off into little rectangles, and I just kind of cut off those little sides to make it look faceted. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually scoring the top of the bars. So I'm going to stick those little crystals on top with some melt and pour. So by scoring the cold process soap, I'm allowing that melt and pour to kind of get into those little grooves and stick a little bit better. And that's a little bit of that leftover melt and pour from the crystals, just a little bit, you don't need a lot. So I'm just going to add a little bit to the top of each one so I can then stick on the citrine, the soap citrines. And I think it's a really cute finishing touch. When you use them, you can obviously take off the citrine and use that on its own, so you have kind of like two soaps in one. But I think it really pulls in together the crystal design in the soap and the colors as well, so it looks really, really cute. So there you have Citrine. I think the colors worked out really beautiful. It screams autumn to me, and the fragrance also screams autumn. I made a very limited amount of these, so if you really want to get your hands on them, they will be available October 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only at LeilaSuds.com. So thank you so much to Belinda from Love Your Suds. She is such a dream to work with, and she was so excited to get this going. I'm just so thrilled. I hope you enjoy this set. You can get it at loveyoursuds.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Leela Suds YouTube channel. You can find me also on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. See you all very soon. Bye.